welcome everyone to today's session. I'll give you the briefest of introductions to Cally Butler and Tracey McCarthy, who are going to be presenting today's session on employer responsibilities. So a massive welcome. So what to expect? We've designated some time for questions and answers, but if you want to ask something just to seek clarification about anything that's mentioned, please do jump in. But if you could save other questions until later. Keep yourself muted if you aren't talking to help us minimize background noise. And at the end of the session, we'll send you a link to a short feedback survey. So please do complete it. Your views and ideas are just so important to help us look at what other sessions we're going to do and improve what we're doing. So your feedback essential. And on that happy note, I will hand over to Tracey and Cally. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. It's lovely to be with you today. Me and Cally offer services mainly to charities, and we live quite close to each other. So we work really well together in supporting charities, not just in the Southwest, they could be anywhere. So Cally's going to start first, and then I'll follow up with HR. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cally. I work in payroll. We're going to be going through the very basics for setting up a payroll. I suspect most of you are sat there thinking, oh my goodness, payroll is really scary and I don't want to do it, but it's really not that bad. So we'll get started. So the first thing you need to do if you are looking at employing somebody is to register with HMRC as an employer. Even if you're only going to employ one person, you still have to register as an employer with HMRC. And you can do that online. If you just Google register as an employer, that will come up in the results for you. Ideally, you need to have registered with HMRC before your first payday. So it's worth bearing in mind that it can take around a week to get all of the information that you need from HMRC to do that. When you have set up, within that first week, HMRC will send you in the post 2 references. That's a PAYE reference and an accounts office reference, which is also known as an employer reference number. And they are crucial for setting up your payroll, because if you don't have those, you can't submit your payroll to HMRC. That's the first bit. It's all quite straightforward. So the next bit is your payroll. With whichever payroll software you choose to use, whether that's the HMRC's basic tools or Sage or BrightPay or whoever else offers payroll software, you need initially to put in your registered business name and the business address that you've registered with HMRC when you register as an employer. You need to put in your PAYE reference and your accounts office reference, because that allows you to send your payroll to HMRC every time you pay people, so they know what's going on. And you also need to decide what dates you're going to pay your staff. So you can choose to pay them on any day that suits you. You can pay them on the first day of the month for the month that's just passed. You can pay them on the last day of the month for the month that's just passed, or it can be a combination of paying someone at the end of the month for the 3 weeks that you know they've worked, and then the last week or so of the month in advance, assuming that they're going to turn up. So once you've got all of that set up, you're ready to add your employees. So this slide just shows all of the information that you need to have for every person to go on that payroll. You need to have their full name and their date of birth and their national insurance number. Lots of people, when they fill in their forms, I don't know if they don't like their middle names, but they tend not to put them on there. But I would say if someone has a middle name, it is far preferable to put that name on there, because there will undoubtedly be other people with the same name, and it just makes it a bit easier for HMRC to make sure they have the right person. You might notice that one of the things that's required is the gender of the employee that you've taken on. I know that can be a bit of a contentious issue with the things around that at the moment, but just to be clear, HMRC will not recognise anything other than male or female. So whatever someone is legally registered or recognised as is the gender that they have to put. There is not an option to say non-binary. So it has to be male or female, and a lot of payroll software won't allow you to add someone if you haven't ticked that box as well. Other things to note on there, which is really useful if somebody is to be off sick, is their contracted working days. So whether that's Monday to Friday or any combination. You need to have them, either new employees provide you with a P45 if they've got another job that they've come from, or you can complete, or they can complete, sorry, a new start checklist which you can get from HMRC online. The only issue I've got with the new starter checklist is it doesn't have anywhere for you to put in the extra information like their contracted working days and payslip email addresses and things like that. But it is crucial for either one for determining someone's tax code. Because as I've found, lots of people don't like it when they think they've been put on the wrong tax code. And I get a bit upset sometimes.
You always blame the person administering the payroll.
They do. But yeah, if someone hasn't got a P45 and they don't provide a new starter checklist and they've ticked, there's normally 3 statements on there. The first one says that this is my first job since the beginning of this tax year. The second one says that they basically had another job already in this tax year. And the third statement is that they have another source of income. If someone doesn't tick any of those options, they will automatically go on basic rate, irrespective of whether they should be paying tax or not. So I would urge you to ensure that anyone who is filling that form in ticks one of those statements, because I get quite a few through my work where people just haven't ticked it. So I will if it's done, if I have that information in time to do the payroll, I will chase up and say, can you find out which statement this person is applicable to them? Otherwise they'll pay too much tax. And that is normally enough to make people tick that box. But as I say, if they don't tick the box, they will be taxed at basic rate. Even if they've only earned £20, they will still pay tax. I've noted on there that you will need to know if anyone has an attachment of earnings order. That usually isn't something that you will have when somebody first starts with you, but it is something that you can get during the course of someone's employment. So, for example, if someone hasn't paid their council tax, their local authority can get a court order saying that it has to be paid through their payroll. But you will normally get that directly. Because obviously some employees won't want to pass that on, but they come directly to the employer. So it might be the following month when they have their second pay run that you get that. But that's the sort of thing I wouldn't worry about until it comes up, and then you can just find out what you need to do at that stage. So into the next slide. And that. Okay, so one thing you may or may not have heard with regards to payroll is that all employers must provide their staff with a pension scheme. That pension scheme has to fulfill the requirements of automatic enrolment. So you have to provide a pension scheme that fits the criteria of it's offered to all employees, that you assess your staff every pay period to ensure that they are correctly in the pension or should be invited to join that pension. And you have to write to your staff to tell them where they fall in that eligibility criteria. So there's three basic categories. The first one is for employees that are eligible. So that is for anyone that is aged 22 and over up to state pension age, and they are earning more than £833 in a month. If they fulfill that criteria, you have, by law, you must enrol them into that pension. Even if they don't want to be enrolled in the pension, the employer has to enrol them at that point. And that employee can then later choose to opt out. But that is something between the employee and the pension scheme. Employers are not allowed to get involved with employees opting out other than to process that opt out in their payroll. And they are also not permitted to discuss or encourage their employees to opt out. The next category is for those who are considered non-eligible. So they are people aged between 16 and 21 or over state pension age. And they could be earning more than £833 a month, or if not, more than £520 a month. Non-eligible basically means that they can opt in to the pension. So if they wish to join the pension, they have to send a written letter or an email to their employer saying, I wish to join this personal pension on this date, and confirm that they have personally submitted that request themselves. And then the final category is entitled. So this covers anyone between 16 and 74 and who earns less than £520 a month. So those people don't have to be enrolled in a pension, but if they want to be in a pension scheme, they have the right to contact their employer and say, I would like to join your pension scheme, and you have to allow them to join. I've got on here about the qualifying earnings being £520. Basically, for automatic enrolment, any earnings under £520 a month do not have to be considered pensionable. But employers, if they wish to, they can say that all earnings are subject to pension. But in terms of the minimum requirement, if it's anything less than 520, it doesn't have to be included for pension.
I just have a quick question here, which is, do they have to be automatically enrolled in a pension scheme if their wages are not consistently over 833?
When somebody first joins, they are earning £833 in that first month, you can postpone them for a maximum of 3 months to wait and see what happens. So it might be that when you get to the end of that 3-month period, they're not earning enough, and so you don't enrol them. If they have frequent months where they're earning that much, I would say to err on the side of caution and enrol them. And if they don't want to be in that pension scheme, they can opt out. And I think that opt out lasts up until the next time that you have to review everyone, which is every 3 years. The contributions for automatic enrolment pensions is it has to be a minimum of 8%. The advice is that employer contributions should be 3% and employee contributions 5%. But obviously, if employers are feeling more generous, they can pay in more than that, or the employees can choose to pay in a higher percentage, or they can choose to pay in a fixed amount, as long as that fixed amount is 5% or greater. When you assess your staff in the payroll, which you would have to do every time you run the payroll, because people's earnings change or they go into a different age band, their eligibility changes, you need to write to them and tell them which category they're in. When I say write to them, you don't have to physically sit there and write them a letter. A lot of payroll software produces letters that you just click a button and off it goes, telling them whether they're eligible, non-eligible or entitled. Or indeed, if you postpone someone because you're not sure that they're going to be earning enough in the next 1 or 2 payrolls, you can postpone them and they'll get a letter telling them that as well. Although, whilst they are postponed, if they wish to join the pension scheme, they can ask to join, you have to let them join. This is just a brief example of some of the people that offer pensions that meet the criteria for automatic enrolment. I am not qualified in any way on pensions, so I can't recommend any to you, but what I will say is that a lot of them charge hundreds and hundreds of pounds just to open a pension scheme with them, which obviously for a lot of organisations isn't feasible, especially if there's a chance that you're not actually going to have anyone paying into that pension scheme. So on that basis alone, I would recommend Nest, because you can set up a pension scheme with them and they will not charge the employer, and then it's just sat there doing nothing, just waiting for you to add employees to it. But obviously, you might want to look more at the returns that you get on your investment. But again, that's not something I can comment on or would even want to hazard a guess at. Pensions are not my favourite thing. The one other main obligation or legal requirement you have with automatic enrolment is that you have to complete a declaration of compliance. And that has to be done within 5 months of your assessment date. And your assessment date is either the day that you registered as an employer or a date that the pension regulator have given you if you've been an employer for some time. You have to complete that even if there isn't anyone enrolled in your pension scheme. The declaration wants confirmation of who the employer is, who the contact is, how many people are on your payroll, how many people are enrolled in your pension scheme, and then you just sign the declaration, say, yeah, as far as I'm aware, this is all accurate, and send it off. And then you can breathe a sigh of relief because you don't have to do it for another 3 years. And then when you get to the end of that 3 years, you have to do the reassessment. So you don't have to send letters to staff again, but it is considered good practice to start the whole process again. So this is the bit that is probably more relevant for most of you, running the actual payroll itself. So most people will now use payroll software that will essentially do it all for you. So most of what you have to do is data input, data entry. So with your timesheet, whether that's someone working hourly or someone receiving a salary, you put that into your payroll. It will automatically calculate any deductions from pay, including tax, national insurance, pensions, any court orders. From that, you generate your payroll reports, which will show you the process of going from gross pay, all of the deductions that come out, and arriving at the take-home pay, which is the important bit for everyone. You distribute your pay slips. I think most people probably do e-pay slips now because it's quicker and it's no less secure. In fact, it's probably more secure now than doing it by post. You pay your employees and you submit your data to HMRC. So that bit is all, as it stands, is quite straightforward. What you will need to be aware of is the different pay items that have to be included in payroll and subject to tax and national insurance. So that can be hours worked for people that get paid hourly, monthly salary, overtime, bonuses, anything like that has to be through the payroll. If someone is off sick, then that needs to be taken into account. So with sick pay, some companies have company sick pay where they will pay people X number of days per year and at full pay. but most smaller organisations seem to rely on statutory sick pay, and the rules for that are a little different. In order to receive SSP, statutory sick pay, your employee will have needed to have been off work for at least 4 consecutive contracted working days, and they have to have earned at least £123 a week on average in the 8 weeks prior to their sickness. So if someone is off sick, they work 5 days a week and they're off sick for 5 days, the first 3 days are not paid. They will get no money for that, and then they will get 2 days SSP. SSP is currently £109.40 a week, but that gets split into daily rates. So if you work 5 days a week, let me just see what that works out at. If you work 5 days a week, your SSP is £21.88 a day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not much. It's not much, and that's only from day 4.
Oh, good grief.
If you work 3 days a week, then that daily rate goes up a little, and so on. If you only work 1 day a week, you would get £109.40 for each that you were off. SSP, provided you put in all the relevant sick dates in your payroll software, it should automatically calculate how much sick pay is due to everyone. The other thing to note as well, if someone is eligible for statutory sick pay, you have to pay it by law. You have no choice. Unfortunately, you can't claim it back from HMRC either, so you do bear the full cost of that as well.
That stopped about 10 years ago, didn't it?
Yes, I still get a lot of people asking me, why can't I claim it back? And haven't been able to do that for years. So yeah, you have to bear the brunt of the cost of that. The other statutory leave that you are more likely to encounter is maternity leave and statutory maternity pay. Then this is another thing where if someone is eligible, you have to pay it. But the good news is that you can claim most of it back if you're a big employer, and if you're a very small employer, you can claim all of it back, plus the employer's national insurance that you pay on it. But again, all of that is done automatically in payroll software. You shouldn't have to do anything manual to adjust for that. With regards to paying your staff, you need to ensure that everyone is being paid the national minimum wage for their age group. It's quite straightforward. If someone is working 10 hours a week and they're age 23, each of those hours needs to be paid at £10.42 an hour minimum. I think where we've heard, there's been things in the media recently with big companies like Marks and Spencer and Argos, I think, have been guilty of not paying national minimum wage. I can only think that that has come up where they have made deductions from pay for things like uniform or DBS checks and things like that. So if you're paying somebody minimum wage and you have paid, for example, their DBS check for them on the understanding that they pay you back and you do it through payroll, you can't really do it if they're on minimum wage, because if you deduct that payment from their take-home pay, it will be considered that you have breached the rules on minimum wage. That's one thing I would say people need to be really, really careful of. And I would always double check with HMRC guidance. In fact, I can't stress enough, if you've got any issues with anything on payroll, Google it and look at the HMRC pages, because there is lots and lots of information there. Most of it is quite straightforward, and will answer your questions. Something else that you need to pay people is holiday, and that also needs to be subject to tax. Not going to go into holiday too much because it will different organisations' needs. But the basics is that every member of staff is entitled to 5.6 weeks holiday a year, prorated if they start or leave partway through your leave year. And I would say that when you are looking at working out what someone's holiday is, use the HMRC holiday calculator. You put in when someone starts, what your leave year is, or when they've left, and what the leave year is, and how much they work, and it will tell you how much holiday to do. It's so much easier. So we touched on one of the things you have to do during payroll is distributing your pay slips. So this is an example pay slip. There are rules about what you have to show on a pay slip. So you have to show the gross pay. So the gross pay are any hours that someone's worked, any overtime, the salary, any other additions to their pay, whether it's back pay or SSP or SMP, that all has to be on the pay slip. The one thing you do need to be sure to do, if someone works varying hours because they're hourly paid, you do have to show the number of hours that they've worked. You can't just do a different salary amount every month that equates the number of hours they've worked. You've got to do it. It also needs to show tax, national insurance, pension, student loans, any attachment orders that have been deducted, and the take-home pay. So everyone knows what they've had in their pay slip and is going into their bank account. Then this is the one bit that people don't tend to like very much, is paying HMRC. To be clear, when you make a payment to HMRC, you're not paying your employee's tax bill. You are paying it on their behalf because you have already taken it out of their wages. I have had people get stroppy with me, say, well, why? I don't see why I have to pay it. It's not mine.
If only it was that simple.
Oh no! So you have to pay it. That's all of the tax, all of the national insurance, any student loans, employers' national insurance. That all has to be paid to HMRC by the 22nd of the following tax month. And the tax months always go from the 6th of the month to the 5th of the following month. So this month it goes from the 6th of July to the 5th of August, and any payments to HMRC will be due by the 22nd of August. And I've got the bank details on there if any of you want it, but they are easily available online as well. The one thing to note actually is mentioning the employer's national insurance. If you are a small employer, which I think you would be, you will be entitled to receive employment allowance. And that will cover up to a maximum of £5,000 employers' national insurance per tax year. So if you pay employers' national insurance of, say, £100 in the month, that £100 will be deducted from your bill, up to a maximum of £5,000 over the year. And I think that's pretty much it for the very basics of payroll. Unless you've got anything you need to add to that?
Wow. Who would ever do it themselves when they've got an expert like you? I'm like, I was learning things then, Cally, and once when I was an HR manager, I was responsible for payroll. I'm still learning.
It does keep changing.
Yeah.
Details on this slide of my web address and my email address. If any of you would like to contact me about any issues that are more particular to your organisation, or if you don't feel comfortable asking questions with other people around, then you can contact me on there. And I've also covered the services that I offer for payroll. I think that's it from me.
Rachel's raised her hand. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, it was just, I popped it in the chat, but I just wondered if I could ask this one around holiday. Because you said that 5.6 weeks holiday per year entitlement. Is that,
Yes.
Did I understand that? So if we have a member of staff who works full-time 37 hours a week, Monday to Friday, and they're currently offered 20 days, that's not right, is it?
Can I cover that in my section?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I cover it in mine.
Thank you.
for raising that, Rachel. Katie?
Hi, thank you. We as a forum are looking at employing someone to do our admin, so clearly they would be our employee. But I think what I'm confused about is who else would be classed as an employee, and so we'd have to go
Sorry
through
to interrupt you, Katie. I'm covering that in a minute.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Anita?
Hi, thank you. It was just a quick question which I mentioned in the chat earlier regarding pensions. If we have an employee who is not in the 16 to 21 bracket or the over state pension age 74, but they earn between the my brain's gone dead, sorry, between the 500 and whatever it was and the 833, do we have to invite them to join into a pension scheme or give them the option?
All employees have to be given the option of joining the pension scheme. The eligibility, if you are eligible, it's just whether you have to be automatically enrolled without their permission.
So if they're more than 533 and or whatever it is, and less than 833, they're not automatically, are they?
No, they're not. They're non-eligible. So you have to tell them that they're non-eligible, but they are allowed to contact you and ask to opt in to join that pension.
So right, okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm mindful of time, so we're going to move
We
on
do
now.
have to
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Cally. Like I say, I learned a lot. Some of the issues that Cally has just talked about, I will be covering. Okay, so right. So if Cally hasn't put you off with employing people, I know she would put me off of it because it just sounds like a nightmare, and I would just want an expert doing it for me, really, so that I can concentrate on my business. So I'm going to talk to you now about HR. Before I start on that, I'd like to introduce you to Ollie. He's also known as Granny's gorgeous boy, and he's my first grandson. This is him at a play and stay session, and I absolutely love taking him. We have so much fun together. You can see by the look on my face, I'm just a big toddler again. But the relevance of introducing you to Ollie is to tell you that our family receives fantastic support from South Gloucestershire parent carers. So they were one of my clients. I think they've been with me for about 5 years now. And I really enjoyed hearing about what they do. But when Ollie came along 3 years ago, and he's waiting for his autism diagnosis, how long's a piece of string, you know, if he ever gets that diagnosis. But the support that we've had as a family is just, you cannot underestimate it. So I just wanted to share that with you. Never thought that I would be accessing the services of one of my clients, but there you go. So this is quite a hot topic for parent carer groups. Before they employ people through the payroll, very often people are submitting invoices and being paid that way. And once they set up their organisation more formally, they're required to put people on payroll. And I'm aware that some organisations experience resistance around that. People will say, no, I'm freelance, I want to be paid. I don't want you to deduct tax and national insurance. I want to submit an invoice and get paid gross. I'm just going to explain why you need to be very careful around that. So there are basically 3 different categories of workers in your business. So we've just been talking about that. Cally's just been telling you. An employee will have full employment rights after 2 years. A worker, so typically casual or 0 hours worker, could have less employment rights. It very much depends on the individual, but that person will have no regular hours, and some of those rights are based on the hours worked. And then if you've got genuinely self-employed people in your organisation, they will have no employment rights, but they must be genuinely self-employed. And there's a government on the government website, there's a an assessment, employment. They call it CEST, don't they? CEST, and why I don't know, but basically you're putting the individual's information into that online tool, and it will tell you whether they're likely to be self-employed or they're entitled to employment rights. So why should you observe this? Well, you may have heard of the Uber cases or Pimlico plumbers that have been taken like to the appeal court, Supreme Court, where employ workers in a business trying to assert their rights. And if you employ people on a self-employed basis and they're entitled to employment rights, you can get fines from HMRC. So I knew an employer once who had £60,000 worth of fines for failing to deduct tax and national insurance at source. You can get fines for employing illegal workers, that's £20,000 per worker. Claims from people asserting their rights, as in the cases that I've just told you, Uber and Pimlico plumbers, and obviously the reputational damage for your organisation. You don't want to be reading on the front of your local paper about you being fined for not employing people correctly. I will come on to the solutions for this. I know this sounds very negative, but I'll explain how I can help you with this. So my strapline is about keeping HR simple. I've been in HR for over 20 years now, mostly working in charities, but I did do some private sector and public sector work. And it's really important to me that I make it easy for you to understand and give you the tools to be able to implement it. So I talk about legislation. Well, yes, that's necessary, but you don't need to know the detail of it. You just need to know that it exists and what your responsibilities are. So I am here to support you through that journey. And that includes all the essential documents that you will need to implement that compliance in your business. Defending claims in the employment tribunal, well, my job is to keep you out of courts and tribunals. And I'm really pleased, since I've been a freelancer, we've never been to tribunal because I put such robust processes in place. So I'll come on to the employer pack. So I've developed this for parent carer groups that I've worked with. I've worked with loads over the last 5 years. So I've listened to what they needed, and I've pulled it together in as simple a format as possible. You wouldn't think that with 13 bullet points, but this is as simple as that I can keep it. So I'm just going to run through this, just summarise it. So as you would expect, you need to provide them with an employment contract, whether that's permanent, fixed term, or a 0 hours agreement. You have to put in disciplinary and grievance policies. That is a requirement. But I also recommend that you put in data protection policy and a sickness absence policy, so that you're very clear about how you manage their data, how you manage absences from work. Working hours and absences, so that's any other absences apart from sickness. That clarifies your expectations of people working in your business. And these are templates that you can adapt to suit your business, but they contain all the statutory obligations. Supervision, some people call it one-to-one, check-ins, job chats, whatever you call it. I've got a toolkit so that you can implement that. And appraisals, I wouldn't recommend implementing appraisals straight away, but there may be a time that you think, yes, let's do appraisals. And I've got a toolkit for that. I've got toolkits for most things, actually. I do prefer a toolkit. And so giving somebody a policy is so dry and it doesn't tell you how to do it. So number 9, the HR file index, which also acts as a checklist. This sort of goes with number 3, data protection. It just helps you to put the documents on file that you need to keep as an employer. Holiday calculator. I have got an Excel spreadsheet, but sometimes to keep it even more simple, just going onto the government website, put in calculate holiday. You know, you put in calculate maternity leave, calculate paternity leave and payments. The government website is a great source of information. Obviously, you're getting up-to-date information as well. You're not having to update it yourself. Employee data spreadsheet. So this is a free database, basically. So your central record. If you're working in a safeguarded environment, this is considered good practice. But it's a great idea because you're not going through individual files if you want information. Employment status and right to work in the UK guidance. So I talked a bit just now about fines for failing to observe right to work in the UK legislation, and that you can get fined £20,000 if you've got somebody in your business that has no right to work there. And an equipment loan form. So if you give out phones or laptops, things like that, keys, it's really good practice to get them to sign for it. Okay, that's my employer pack, and I'll come on to tell you a bit more about how you could access that in a bit. So why would you choose me? So I'm specialising in voluntary charity, social enterprise sectors. I care about what I do. I've chosen to specialise in charities because it fit with my values. As you can hear, I was talking about self-lost parents and carers. I just love working with those organisations. I do the HR so that you don't have to, giving you peace of mind that you're complying with the law. And I can be flexible because it is just me. I can be flexible to meet the needs in your business and very often your budget. So the amount that I get involved in supporting you can vary according to what you can afford. I get it. So my employer pack, like I said, I specialise in supporting charities, mindful of your budgets. I've developed this offer so that you've got the key documents that you need. It makes you aware of your responsibilities, and I've got a special offer. Usually, I heard somebody say recently, for what I provide, they paid £1,500 plus VAT to a company to provide that. I think it's outrageous for small organisations. No, I want your funds to be channeled into providing the great services that I know you do provide. So I charge £450, and I'm not registered for VAT because it's just me. But as I said, those are templates. I'll work with you to tailor, especially the employment contract, that needs to be tailored. But the rest of it is templates for you to adapt. So £450. I can guarantee that by the end of the year. I'm mindful that a lot of you work term time only, so it's no good saying, well, it's only valid for a month, because you'll be going on holiday, you're not going to well-earned rest. But I'll guarantee that until the end of the year, £450 for that employer pack. I'd just like to give credit to my very good friend Mark at Brand 51, who created my branding and the images that you've seen today in my presentation. He's also, he works with cross parent carers, and I just invite you to check out what he's done for them, because I'm so impressed with it. He's transformed their website and their branding, and he could do that for you. And bonus, he's not eligible for VAT, just like me. So that's all from me. I'm sure there's things that I've missed out, so if anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and if it's related to payroll, obviously Cally will answer them.
There are a couple of questions in the chat, and thanks so much to you and to Cally for your presentations. I'm happy to read out the questions unless people want to ask them themselves. I'll go ahead. So the first question is, if a member is on the pensions front, if a member of staff is older than 60 and earns more than 830 a month, can they opt out of the pension scheme?
So did you say older than 60?
Yeah.
Anyone that is automatically enrolled has the right to opt out. So if on 1 month they earn enough that they should be enrolled and they are enrolled, normally within about a week, 2 weeks, depending who the pension provider is, they get given an information pack either by email or in the post, and that contains all of the details that they need to opt out. So then they just need to follow those, and then they won't be enrolled until the next re-enrollment redeclaration comes around.
Thank you. The next question is, can you be fined for failing to offer a pension?
I believe the pension regulator can fine people. I know they can fine you for not completing the declaration of compliance. If you have employees that don't earn enough and they don't ask to join a pension, then you don't have to provide one until you get to a point where someone asks to join. At that point, you do have to do it.
And am I right in thinking that you can delay it for the first 3 months?
Yes, you can postpone for 3 months. But within that 3-month postponement period, employees can still request to join or opt into that pension, and at that point you have to act on it.
And then there's another question that's come in that says, if we have a parent volunteer who we wish to remunerate and they do not have any other employment, am I correct in thinking they are a worker and not self-employed, and so we would have to do tax and payroll, etc. for them? And employ them on a 0 hours contract?
Yeah, basically the answer is yes. There's very strict rules about what constitutes a self-employed worker. They must have total control over their work. If they are not able to come to work, they can send in somebody else to do the work. They should be using all their own equipment. They shouldn't be seen as part of your team. Those are just the top ones. But they must, there's very clear distinction of what constitutes a worker and what is genuinely self-employed.
Thank you. I think there might be another question. Okay. The rules on holiday pay for casual hours staff use a preceding 12-week period for calculating entitlement. In the PCF world, there is a huge variability across the school year, and July to September will contrast greatly with a January to March period. And you fix the period to calculate for the year, say January to March, to avoid this?
It's 52 weeks, it should be calculated, and I'll let Cally explain a bit more about that.
Used to be 12 weeks that you had to use to work out their average, but last year it got changed to 52. So when someone who is still term time only is still entitled to the full 5.6 weeks annual leave. So when they request to take holiday in, say, December, you have to look back at the previous 52 weeks, and it has to be 52 weeks where they've worked, and average out their weekly pay so that you know what 1 week's annual leave is. If they then want to take 2 weeks leave in July, you then have to go back to get 52 weeks worth of data that runs for the 52 weeks prior to that holiday. So the average pay for 1 week's holiday in December could be very different from their average pay in July. So it won't be the same every time.
And the principle you have to remember is that every worker is entitled to step away from their work for 5.6 weeks a year and be adequately paid for doing so, for it to have rest. So rather than them be reluctant to take holiday because they will lose money, they're supposed to be paid a fair wage when they're not working.
But it's also supposed to be that you get paid for your holiday when you take your holiday,
Yeah.
even for 0 hours staff. So if somebody hasn't worked because there's no hours to give them and they want to take annual leave, they still have to contact their employer and say, I'd like to book annual leave for this period. And then at that point, you pay them their holiday.
A supplementary question come in that says, what if they haven't worked 52 weeks? Does this mean they lose out?
No. Do you want to take that one?
If someone hasn't worked as many as 52 weeks, then you calculate their average weekly pay based on the number of weeks that they have worked. And you will do that until you get to a point where you have 52 weeks worth of data.
Okay, thank you. Feedback says makes sense, so that's always good. And there's Lorraine has her hand up. Do you want to ask your question, Lorraine?
Yeah. Hiya. I'm trying to calculate one of our staff's holidays. This lady works 39 weeks of the year, so she's term time. She works 25 hours, but over 5 days. And I have checked every .gov and HMR, and they can't seem to calculate the pro rata for me of because she's working over 5 days. I wondered
Lorraine,
if any. Yes.
Lorraine, can I just tell you, my working hours and absence policy shows you how to calculate it manually, just so that you can understand how that works.
Okay.
And I'm happy to share that. If anybody wants to email me after this, I'm happy to share that section of the policy.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, I've always found it best to work it out in hours, because if you call it days and say somebody is job share and they work 2.5 days a week, what is a day?
In this particular example, I would do 25 hours a week times 5.6, and that would tell you how much holiday they have for the year. When they updated the holiday last year, you're basically told that if you don't work a full year, which term time only staff don't, because they are employed for the whole year, they're still entitled to the full 5.6 weeks.
Right, right. Thank you. Thank you.
Another question. Can we calculate 12 months worth of annual leave and then pay it over 12 equal monthly payments? And they take annual leave during term time, as we are only term time employees, like teachers do.
I would say that sounds like averaging out your pay for term time only work over 12 equal months, so you don't have a month with no pay. And where the holiday is included in that, it is assumed that that holiday they're being paid is covering some of the weeks that they're off for the school holidays. So they wouldn't then take more time off in term time. They would have the school holidays as their holiday.
South Gloss parent carers pay 12 equal payments to term time only workers, and it includes holiday, because obviously they're getting more than the statutory entitlement when they're not working out of term time. So it is possible to operate that system quite effectively.
I haven't seen any more hands up. So can I just check, are there any other questions?
I'm happy
Okay.
to take them on email
Yes, thank you.
following this session. Yeah, happy for anybody to email me.
Thank you. Right, in that case, it's just leaves it to me to thank both Tracey and Cally for being total geniuses around HR and payroll.
I have to come more often.
Today's gurus. I'm sure people will be contacting you to ask those awkward questions later on. So huge thanks to you both for today. So thanks so much to everyone for asking your brilliant questions and taking part today. So thanks so much, everybody. And I will now close the session.
Thank you,
Huge
Sarah.
thanks.
Thank you.